very much for joining me here today. I have some speaker notes prepared, but I'm actually just going to go from the heart on this one because it's an important announcement for our community. Okay, so what I'm announcing today is a complete change in our philosophical approach to how we deal with open-air illicit drug use. As you know, currently we have seen a proliferation of open-air drug use in our community. The Cannabis Act aside, we see people who are consuming drugs, injecting drugs, smoking drugs in our parks, in our playgrounds, in our bus shelters, in front of our businesses. It's creating an environment where community members have expressed concern and fear. You've heard me talk about the fact that the number of respondents to our community safety and well-being plan indicates only 48% of people who responded feel that they are safe or very safe in our community. That's concerning. One of the things that we're going to do to change that is we're going to take a new approach to how we deal with people who are using these substances in public. So, effective today, we are launching a safer places, safer public spaces approach, which is a no tolerance approach to open air illicit drug use. So what does that mean? It means that members of this community can expect that police officers will not tolerate people injecting and smoking up in front of public places, places where our community members should feel safe. Members of the community should feel that they can call the police. They can advise us if somebody is engaged in that behavior in those public spaces, and we will endeavor to respond as quickly as we can. If we can't respond, they will be receiving a phone call back from us within 60 minutes, advising we have been unable to respond and why, and checking to see whether or not the person is still there. It also means that our officers are empowered as they're driving and patrolling in our streets, as they're walking on their beat, as they're on their bicycles, to stop and tell people if they're engaged in that behavior, they need to move along. This is no longer tolerable on our streets. We know we have a CTS site in this community. If somebody needs to inject to meet the needs of that addiction, and let's face it, this is an illness that people are, quite frankly, we're not discompassionate about, we're not uncompassionate about. They need to do it in an appropriate location, and that's the appropriate location. We will move them along. If they do not comply with that, the public needs to be aware. Our officers have been told that possession of those drugs is still illegal. People will be arrested, they will be searched, and those drugs will be seized. We do not want to criminalize anybody who has an addiction. That is not our intent. Our intent is to ensure that they are provided with the resources they need and the direction they need to where they can go to safely use these substances. To that end, we will be providing our officers with information and documentation that they can hand out. So our officers will be equipped, and sorry I don't have polished copies of this, but they'll be equipped with postcard-size information to our officers, how they can refer people to resources within our community to assist them. Not just during business hours, but 24 hours a day. More importantly, those in our community whom we will be engaging with will be provided also with documentation, should they choose to accept, on places where they can go. For example, the CTS site, the nurse practitioner-led 360-degree clinic, Forecast Addiction Services and Withdrawal Management, Peterborough, Right to Heal Peterborough, and Elizabeth Fry peer-to-peer outreach, as well as 24-hour services where they can get in touch for some support. Our community is crying for help. Our job is public safety. We will continue to support those in our community whose job it is to promote public health. We are a pillar of the PDS. I recognize that. We're the law enforcement pillar. We have strayed from the center of policing. We have 5 core responsibilities in the Police Services Act. This meets 2 of those core responsibilities: crime prevention and law enforcement. Again, we're not here to criminalize people who have an addiction. We're here to make our streets safer. We're here to make our public spaces safer for everybody. Yeah, so the Cannabis Act has its own provisions as far as where people can consume and possess. So this is exempt from that. This is about the rest of the Schedule 1 substances within the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act. Now, you will have heard a lot of things about we can't arrest our way out of this situation, and that's entirely correct. However, what we more accurately would be saying in this regard is we're not going to charge our way. it's still illegal to possess these substances. Let's make no mistake about that. We will exercise our discretion, but if people choose to ignore our direction, that this is no longer acceptable, they will be subject to an arrest. They will have their drugs seized from them. And if appropriate, they will be released unconditionally so as not to criminalize them. But they won't be allowed to consume that substance in public space. And you know what? Great question, a great distinction. Anybody who's using those drugs in our community in an open public space, whether they're an addict or not, will be treated the same way. It's not my intention to criminalize anybody who is engaged in that behavior. For the most part, we're going to run across a vulnerable community. And the reason that we're doing this and making this announcement is because it's going to look a little different. People are going to see a little different actions with our officers. The officers know that they are supported in their activity to help make our community safe. And that's exactly what I expect to see.
What exactly decided for you to prompt on this?
So it's been weighing on me actually for quite some time. I drive through our community, as many of you know. Many of you know, or maybe you don't, that quite often early morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm walking through our parks, I'm walking through our public spaces, I see this, I hear the feedback. As we're continuing to work on the research leading up to our own budget, when I became really aware of how our community feels around public safety, as we dug into the community safety and well-being plan and the implications of what those respondents had indicated in that, it really came to crystallize for me, we need to do something. We need to do something for this community. That's the job of the police service in this pillar. Our job is public safety, and we're going to engage in public safety. No, the Wolf Street encampment and what's happening there has not factored into it, but make no mistake, we're in constant communication with the city as they continue to work on their plans, and we will work with the city to support their plans and what's happening in that regard. We have strong connections with the city in that way, and we will continue to work on that, foster that, and build those relationships. So we have a number of key performance indicators that we'll be measuring in terms of our action, which will include some of that, where it's happening. We'll be tracking visually and on a map as far as where we're getting these calls for service, where these interactions are happening, and we'll be able to lay that over crime and what's happening there. But I do want to also be careful to say that just because somebody has an addiction doesn't necessarily mean they're involved in other criminal behavior. If they're engaged in that activity in a public space, that meets our threshold for criminality. We'll deal with that. My hope is that people will learn that it's not allowable and that they will go to an appropriate location to consume. But we'll be measuring that and tracking what our progress, what our impacts are. Anytime you introduce something new, you need to have proper measurable data marks, if you will, so we know whether or not we're making an appropriate. Well, let forecast speak for forecast in terms of their thoughts. But you're absolutely right. I did reach out to key stakeholders as we were formulating this plan. In some cases, it was a consultative kind of feedback, and in other cases, it was simply, this is what we're going to do. There are other community stakeholders in this city who have a different responsibility than the police. My responsibility is very straightforward. It's laid out in the Police Services Act. That's where I need to fit in. I will support our community partners as they continue to pursue their responsibilities. But when it comes to law enforcement, the Peterborough Police Service, the chief of police, have primary responsibility. And I appreciate that. That's something that we've contemplated in this. I do know that we do track where people are overdosing, if you will, if that's what you're getting at. So we do track that now. We'll continue to track that. It's one of our key performance indicators as we move forward. We also know that many of those overdose events are taking place in personal or private residences. But is there an opportunity for us to help engage and engage our community stakeholders to help them reach and do some outreach? Absolutely. And part of that is our referral. I want people to know where to go, where it's acceptable to go. To my understanding, there's only one other police service that's done this in Canada, and that's in Edmonton. So Edmonton Police Service launched this early in September, and because their issues were around violence and some of the unpredictable responses that people have when engaging in this type of substance use and misuse. And I don't want us to get to a point where we're having to address random acts of violence So we have an opportunity right now to help promote overall community and public safety. This is the front end of that. The short answer is we're in Ontario. We will lead this way, and I'm doing it for the community of Peterborough, and 2 areas where we police, Lakefield and Cabot-Monument. This is very much a local issue for us. So we'll just make a clarity here, so not everybody's going to be arrested. Some are just going to be told to move on, and if they comply and they follow that direction, then they will be on their way. If they are arrested and released unconditionally, they will be provided with information if they choose to accept it. If they choose not to accept it, I can't force that help on people. It's certainly our hope that that will be the case because we've consulted and we've spoken to our community partners. They know this is coming. They know it's coming and it's being announced today. So I can only let you talk to them in terms of what their responses are going to be in relation to that. But very much we'll be providing at least information on how to get out. I suspect that there will be some people in our community who are not going to be happy by this, and I can appreciate that. Some of those folks are going to be very much focused around the concerns that were raised around public health, right? And how do we look after the wellness of those folks? And I absolutely appreciate that. If that's their responsibility, we're going to support them with that responsibility. But that's not my responsibility. My responsibility is crime prevention and law enforcement. We'll work together. They may not be happy with where I'm going to go. I don't know. But I do know I have to do something. As the chief of police, the accountability is mine. I can't do this without the support of the men and women in this police service and without the support of our city partners.